Welcome, GrayMatter leader, to our unpublished podcast for GNC. I'm so delighted that you've chosen to tune in and invest some of your time today to engage with us in a conversation intended to move you to the leading edge of your life and business as a leader. Here at GrayMatter, as we always say, we know and believe that you've got the power to activate your brain in a way that will take you out of autopilot thinking and into the leader you were meant to be. Now, if you're wondering, my name is Janette, and I'm the head of sales and communication here at GMC and your host for today's leadership conversation. I'm joined by my co-host and founder of GMC, BJ Gray herself. And today we're talking about how to achieve an impossible goal. I don't think anyone is more excited than I am. And I think this is going to be such a treat for leaders and even those who don't consider themselves leaders. So without further ado, BJ, please take the spotlight. How are you this morning?
Thank you, Janette, for the introduction. And I'm so excited to be here this morning because I wanted to bring up a topic where I could flip the switch from always talking about building mental strength and those mental muscles to deal with adversity or deal with obstacles in our job or complex work situations. And I always talk about being resilient, right? And when you build resilience, you're learning how to have the mental strength to get through something and bounce back really quickly and react to it in a way that gives you the stamina to move forward. And so I thought it would be interesting to flip the switch and talk about building the mental muscles to grow. And the one way that I work with my clients to do this is to have them set an impossible goal, because this teaches them those exact same skills, but from a more of a positive light, right? When you're achieving a goal, it's exciting and it's something that it's unattainable, but when you get it, you're going to feel really great versus kind of dealing with things that are coming at you and you have to react to them. So the impossible goal will teach you how to adapt to change, just like we do with resilience. And it'll teach you to own mistakes, just like we do when we're in a tough situation. And it'll teach you to empower yourself. So the impossible goal is just a new way to build mental muscles.
How do you even define an impossible goal? Would it be can I have 5 cupcakes every day?
5 cupcakes every day.
But an impossible goal.
It can't be something that's gonna
I know, I really love cupcakes. I'm
cupcakes.
sorry.
Can I eat 5 cups? You can always eat 5 cupcakes, Janette. An impossible goal is something that you really you don't have evidence that you can achieve. I know you have evidence that you can achieve eating 5 cupcakes, but an impossible goal is something that you don't have evidence for yet, that you don't have evidence that you can achieve it. And it's making you believe in that future state of yourself and aligning yourself with what it would be like if you did achieve this impossible goal. Who would you be? How do you start acting from that future state so that you can start taking the action to get there? So you kind of start mentoring yourself from that future space. And it's going into something with, I don't know, without evidence. And that is a mental construct to work your motivation around, right? When we don't know something, it's very easy to get scared and to stop. Yeah. But when you start to work on that mental muscle that you're going to persist, you're going to take action, and you're going to learn how to fail repeatedly to figure out something that you don't know. I mean, sometimes we call that being resourceful in the business world. A problem solving person has to be resourceful. They got to figure out from ground zero how to get something done that they've never done before. It's sort of the same thing, but I like to look at persisting as taking action, failing, and not letting yourself get stuck because you fail. Adapting to that change. Failing to me is just figuring out the next thing that you're going to try. So it's just changing it up. So to me, that takes a lot of mental strength to stay with something for a long time till you reach this impossible goal in the future.
Got it. And so one of the things that came up for me, first of all, as you were describing this, was that it can't be something as small and trivial as eating 5 cupcakes a day for many reasons. Obviously, I know there is no trainer in the world who would agree with that, but also just for the mere fact that I can just go and buy 5 cupcakes or bake 5 cupcakes. Like that's just not what we're talking about here. We're talking about almost something that is tied to a larger life vision, if you will. Am I hearing you right?
Yes, exactly. It's like jumping off the cliff into something that you've always wanted to know, to try, but you just never had the faith that you could you could survive in that future space, right? So I'm going to give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
I took a big break from my career about 5, 6 years ago, and I kept thinking, I want to do something different. I want to um, leave the corporate world where I had a steady job, a steady income. Um, I knew what the future would be. I knew how much money I would make, how much money I would save. I knew what my growth trajectory was going to be in that company. I wanted to always try a couple different things. Like, could I pivot my career and still survive? And
Mm-hmm.
to take that leap and to actually like put myself into that new space was a huge mental construct for me to build. I had to build this relationship with myself, with the future,
Mm-hmm.
that no matter what I do, I will survive. And I did. I took that leap. I went into making from like, way up high to ground zero to start fresh
Mm-hmm.
and learn how to be an entrepreneur. And I actually
Yeah.
tried two different things at once. I wanted to be a business owner of a doggy daycare, and I wanted to go back to school and become a coach, which I am now. And both of those, I had no idea what that would look like, how to do it. But I took the leap. I jumped off the cliff and believed in myself and believed that I would iterate to learn how to be an entrepreneur. I would iterate my learning. I would iterate my action over and over and over until I got to a place that I could survive. But that was
Mm-hmm.
almost a 3-year journey. So impossible goals sometimes take a long, long time, but you have to
Right.
constantly kind of live in that future state that you're going to get there and believe in yourself that
Okay.
you're going to survive whatever comes your way. You're going to have to persist through any sort of obstacle or change that's going to happen. It's super empowering to put yourself. It's like pretend you never knew how to swim, and I was going to take you on
Mm-hmm.
a boat to the middle of the ocean, and every day we were going to jump off that boat until you learned how to swim. It's like that crazy of an idea, right? So you just got to
Mm-hmm.
like know that you're going to mentally hold yourself together every day when you jump off that boat and try to tread the water. And I think
I love that.
you learn how to
That's so
like,
good.
it's so good, right? And you learn
Mm-hmm.
that builds so much mental strength. So now, let's just say 6 years later, I am so much more adept to dealing with failing, to dealing with
Mm-hmm.
adversity. Things
Mm-hmm.
don't seem that impossible to me anymore. I've survived the
Right.
biggest impossible thing. So I like achieving mental strength and mental fitness through the activity of an impossible goal, because it's a different realm of it's a different experience, but it still requires you to do everything that you need to do to become stronger when things are going poorly in your life. But you're actually
Why do
achieving
you
some new
think,
knowledge and growing.
why do you think, or why would you recommend our listener to not just listen to your story and go like, wow, that's like fantastic that she could be able to do that. But then just leave it at that, like some motivation, inspirational moment of just listening to you talk about how you were able to just put yourself out there every day, start from scratch. Why do you think our listener ought to do the same and set that kind of an impossible goal for themselves right now? Like, given how the state of things are, do you still recommend that he or she does that? And why is that important?
Because I think it's important for everybody to enter into something that they've never done so that they understand themselves better. They like in that space, they're going to learn new blind spots about themselves, and they're going to have to figure out how to engage with something they have no knowledge about. And I think those two things really are where we grow from. And if you're a person who wants stimulation and wants to keep becoming the best version of yourself, then you got to do little things like this, where you put yourself into a situation that you don't have, that you don't know, that you don't have the evidence for. And this is just one way to really stimulate growth, is to be forced into learning how to engage with something and start to understand new blind spots that you might have that you never knew about. I mean, then you're really starting to thrive and become better, right? I mean, we're put on this planet to always, to me, figure out how to do things better. And if you're that kind of person and you like that kind of motivation, an impossible goal is like a new way to scratch that itch.
Okay.
It's just
Totally
it's a new
got it.
opportunity to grow. Yeah. And that's why I encourage people in their careers to think bigger than just their everyday job, than just their everyday responsibility. That's where you're going to find satisfaction in your job. I mean, what is something that you really want to do, a stretch that you've never thought you could do, and then go out there and engage with it, and don't get frozen because there was nothing there to prove that you could do it. You know, your goal might not happen in, like, so for me, the first 3, I took a break for 3 years to achieve becoming an entrepreneur. 3 years is a long time. I could have easily jumped back into working in the first year when I really saw no results. It wasn't until like the second and third year that I started to get my groove. So when we go out on these missions for an impossible goal, it's really about the long-term vision and the long game of how to persist when you don't have evidence for a long time. And that in itself is also another really good trait when you're trying to think about your career in a different manner, in not a day-to-day manner, but in a long version of your career. And I feel like a lot of people in their 30s and 40s don't have that vision for their career. They've been doing it, they've been doing the daily grind, but what is going to give them the vision for the next 10, 15, 20 years that they need to work? Well, find an impossible goal. Find something that you can motivate towards, or learn new skills about yourself and about how to engage with things. It's a different way of being resourceful. And I think those are valuable skills that will make you feel satisfied with where you're going. Does that make sense?
It really does. And you keep coming back to something I want to touch on when you talk about it's having that playing the long game, having that long view, and having something. I feel from what you're saying, it's like something that's just pulling me forward, essentially, and it kind of makes everything I'm doing now. So you're talking about just having a future having a future vision, and then knowing how to live from that future. So the question is, how exactly do we do that? How do we live from the future?
Well, it starts with the belief, like the belief that is, you kind of start to like put a vision of who that person is when they've achieved that impossible goal, right? So here's an example. One of my clients' wife, she's not my client, and so this is an indirect story, but I did watch her YouTube video. She at the start of the pandemic, put out an impossible goal to become a photographer. She's never picked up a camera. She's never, developed any film, printed any film. She, by all means, doesn't have a career in photography. And she wanted to become a photographer. And at some point in the future, she wanted to have a show, like literally a curated art show of her work. Now that's like going from an everyday consumer to being an artist, right? She saw herself
pretty
as an
much.
yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy goal. She saw herself as an artist. She had to envision herself as having a show in a studio with her prints, with her work up on the board. And maybe she had cocktails there. Maybe she was speaking to everybody. She really believed she could be that person one day in the future. But she's never picked up a camera. She's never printed. She didn't even know what her subject was going to be. And so she took the year during a really rough year, like a pandemic, when people were thrown off their game. Instead of reacting to what was happening in society, in her day-to-day life, she put this long-term vision together and she became proactive. But she wasn't a great photographer or even able to take interesting photos for, I would say, 6 months, right? But she kept doing it. And she actually went out and she had to travel. Well, she had to travel during a year when we weren't allowed to travel because she decided her subject was going to be nature. But she did it. She didn't let any of these obstacles stop her. And little over a year into it, she had her first show. And it's work that I would say is worthy of buying. Like, it's that good of work. So, how did she stay with, how did she network? How did she learn from people? How many bad photos did she take before? How many early mornings did she have to get up that was uncomfortable? There's a lot of uncomfortable emotions that go when you take an impossible goal on. But I think that stimulation and that growth in yourself, I mean, she talks about it in her YouTube video, how much mental strength she had to have. And here's what she did. This is an interesting thing. One of her biggest fears was going out on these road trips to take photos by herself. She went all by herself. She got up early in the morning and went into these canyons and into these forests all by herself to take photos. And that fear of not only being alone, but being in the wilderness, far away from people, was something she had to overcome mentally to achieve this impossible goal that she's going to have an art show. That to me that's like biting off something that you have no evidence you can be, but she had that vision of herself. She believed every day, she believed she could be that person, no matter what setback she had, no matter what fear she had. And that's how you start this impossible goal. So same with me, being an entrepreneur. I am not a salesperson. I'm not a marketing person. I've never written content before, but how did I figure all that out and not get thrown off my game to stop and just go back to what I knew?
Yeah.
So it's taking this belief in yourself and working through all the uncomfortable nuances that are going to get you to that future self.
Okay, so like you said, this is going to be really uncomfortable, and I like something you mentioned at the start of this, where you talked about being resourceful, essentially saying you're going to fail and you really need to figure out how to handle that. Let's talk about this very, very uncomfortable part, the uncomfortableness of this process, because like you said, there's going to be a lot of sacrificing that has to be done, and a lot of setbacks, and things don't go the way we plan in the time we plan. How do we handle those moments or those situations without quitting halfway through?
Well, that's when I go right on back to my, the thought model that I use as my mindset strategy. To me, when we start feeling uncomfortable, it's because we're having a thought that is creating our emotion to be, you know, a more of a negative experience. And so there's two things that I like to tell my clients is, one, own that you're uncomfortable, own that emotion, own that mistake that might be coming your way, or that failure that just occurred. It's okay to have a negative emotion. That's my first thing. It's okay to be uncomfortable. That's part of living, right? So let's just learn how to process these emotions that don't always feel super great. But I want you to be able to sit with that emotion, own it, not try to push it away, not try to change it. That's the first step. And the second step is then go into your deep dive into your thoughts. And, you know, thoughts are a very conscious thing. And so we have to decide what we want to think. So go through your head and identify with these conscious thoughts that you're having, and decide if this thought is something that you can potentially believe in another thought or change. And those thoughts are within your control. So when you're ready to move on from the emotion that you're struggling with, the uncomfortable emotions, then you get to figure out what thought you want to think to get out of it and change that result. So always go back to the thought model, and the model as the mindset strategy.
Which, you know, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think now is a perfect time for us to talk about the thought model and where people can find it, as well as the incredible academy that we essentially just launched, although it's still kind of on beta mode at the moment. And, you know, the thought model that BJ mentions here is something we give away to our members. It's something you're going to get if you do join the academy. BJ, do you want to talk a little bit about what the thought model is like, and who it's for, or how it can help?
Well, yeah, I want to just talk about the leadership bootcamp that we just created, because that is where you're going to learn how to use the model, how the model becomes the cornerstone for all of your strategies to move forward or to achieve different results. So Leadership 3.0 Bootcamp is being launched as we speak. And the first course, the first bootcamp is a 4-week course. And it's really about self-awareness and self-mastery and self-control. And that is where we learn the skills to manage your mind and to manage your emotions. And it's all about who you are, the awareness of what makes you tick and your blind spots, and then being able to manage yourself so that when you go out into your workplace or the world, you have the skills to get through anything. So we start there, because as a leader, I really believe you need to lead yourself first before you can lead others. So this 4-week course will dive into the thought model, which is really how you think about any circumstance creates your emotions, and our emotions is what drives our behavior, and our behavior is where our results come from. And when we can learn how to have a process around that thought model, you can actually you can like evolve from where you're at to where you want to be a lot quicker. And then just managing your emotions and owning emotions is something we're not mentally or emotionally healthy in this world. We tend to do a lot of things that become reactions to our emotions, like overeating, over shopping, over drinking, over looking at Facebook, because we want to avoid those emotions. And this first course will teach you how to like manage all those emotions. So I really want everybody to take a look at the course. It's not expensive. And we have some live coaching within that course. It's an online course, but you will have some time with me to ask questions and to get some coaching. So if you want to start building mental muscles and mental fitness and learn how to work yourself into an impossible goal, I would definitely check out bjgray.com and go to the Academy tab.
Or they could even access it at GrayMatterCoach.com.
Yep, both bjgray.com or GrayMatterCoach.com. And with all those skills and tools, you will be able to manage yourself to achieve an impossible goal.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when things are tough. Before I ask the last question, there is something that I've learned over this time that we work together on the importance of understanding the thought model, getting mentally fit, and actually surrounding yourself with the support system like a coach like you. The benefit, the greatest to me at least, the greatest benefit of it is it's not just that you hire a coach or you take a course like, let's say, the leadership 3.0 bootcamp. It isn't just that initial benefit that you get from having that investment with the coach or with the course, where you spend a couple of sessions working on yourself. It's also that you learn how to coach yourself, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, completely. You learn self-coach. Yeah, you learn how to self-coach, and because you don't want to have a coach forever, you want to be able to take these skills and manage them yourself. And so learning this and having someone like me help you become adept at it will create confidence and will create an agility in your own ability to take care of yourself and coach yourself. It's like a cornerstone you'll carry with you for the rest of your life, and you'll be able to work with yourself to overcome things. Yeah, it's the self-coaching
Okay.
part that you want to like master.
I find like that has the entire value of why it's important to invest in a coach or to learn how to use the thought model. Like just hiring a coach who can help you figure out how to um, manage those voices and how to uh, a perspective on how to approach difficult emotions or difficult conversations. That thing you carry with you forever. And now I understand why you don't even like working with people for long periods of time. Like when you first said that, I was like, why would you only want it to be a short period of time? Because you actually want to teach an individual that same skill so they can actually become self-sufficient. And I think that's super powerful.
Yes, for
Um,
sure. That's the opposite of coaching versus therapy. Is coaches kind of launch people into the future and launch them to obtain things and move forward. And therapy is obviously if really a good tool if you're not functioning, but we take
mhm.
clients that are functioning and make them function better on their own.
Mm. Beautiful. So that leads me to my last question. We've addressed the fact that it's going to get uncomfortable and it will be hard, and failure is one of the things that we should expect. Let's talk about what kind of failure exactly is acceptable failure. And for me, thinking about the idea of pursuing something that I know is going to take time, and that there's going to be a lot of setbacks, and I have to keep my mind in the game no matter what happens and not lose that, even if there are obstacles. It makes a lot of sense. But at what point do I start um, to 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 realize whether I should change or change paths or maybe do something entirely different? What kind of failure exactly is the one that is okay, and what kind of failure is not okay?
That's a really good question. And I think that's a personal, question. I don't know how,
Okay.
I mean, it depends on what you're trying. Is it a financial thing that you've, run out of finances?
Money, yes.
Yeah, that you need to like pivot back to something different. But I would say, I think every failure is an important one because it puts you on the path to the right direction versus a setback, right? It just changes
Yes.
the course. And so learning how to change course um, is is what we want. So I don't think that
Okay.
there's a failure out there that isn't that is a wrong one. The only wrong
Okay.
failure I think is when you fail yourself by not taking action. So I think
Ah,
when people don't when they're so afraid of failing or they're so afraid of trying something that they don't have evidence for, then
yes.
to me they're failing themselves before they try because they haven't even tried. So that is the only
Uh-huh.
failure that I say is not acceptable. But I do
Right.
think personally everybody will have to make a choice at some point on their journey if they're not enjoying it anymore, if they can't afford to go forward anymore. Um, I mean, that's a personal thing for sure.
Okay. You like to talk a lot about failing forward. Can you help
Yeah.
us understand what that means? I guess in this context, it really applies.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I just said. It's like you don't fail to have a setback. You fail to adjust and move into another direction. Failing puts you, it's like you drive down a road that you think you're supposed to be on and you end up hitting a cul-de-sac, right? Well, you got to
Mm-hmm.
turn around and go back out and go down the next road. And that's
Right.
exactly what failing forward is you're going to fail, you're going to adjust and go down some and try something else. So, um, in my own example, I actually tried several different, what do you want to call it, target markets for my coaching. It didn't just start out as mid-level leaders, emerging
Yes.
leaders that I wanted to
Yes.
coach. I tried um, students getting out of college and starting their career. I tried managers. I tried executive coaching. I tried entrepreneurs. I tried women who were um, solo entrepreneurs. So, I mean, I tried several niches and I wrote content and I spoke to different people. It took a long time before I really rounded out my program and it fit most perfectly with this segment of employees or associates. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that took a couple years. So it
Yeah.
might take um, a few tries in this impossible goal or this thing that you set out for. You might like in the example of the photographer. Maybe she was shooting color. I don't know, but like maybe she shot color for a long time, and all of a sudden she decided to switch black and white. Right? Like
Yes. Yes.
it it puts you on the right the right path. Yeah.
I'd love to address one thing that just came up for me as you were saying that. And maybe this could be like the final idea you or perspective that you leave us with. In all of this, like say I'm a young leader at a company and I have like this impossible goal to be the CEO or like the vice president of a company, and it's like a really impossible goal. And along the way I realize it is hard, so I'm aware it's going to be hard and things really do start getting hard, and maybe I take risks and they kind of backfire at me. And then I also have to deal with the public opinion, if you will, of maybe the people I've shared my goal with, or maybe some things I try at work and it just doesn't work out, and then I have to deal with my colleagues thinking maybe I'm crazy or I went too far or whatever. How do I deal with not just my own feelings of disappointment, but also how others perceive me as I am failing?
Oh, such a good question. First of all, the only way that judgment is bothering you is because you're thinking about it bothering you. It's your own thought about people judging you that is causing you to feel uncomfortable. They can't hurt you if they're judging you. It's the way you think about them judging you. Like for me, I when people judge me, it's like that's cool, that's your opinion. And it doesn't bother me that people judge me. I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? And that's okay. And um so it's your own thought about how they're judging you that's hurting you. I just want people to understand that. And the
Right.
second thing is it's your own thought that's causing disappointment. Now, here's how I would think about maybe aborting an impossible goal, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is not the right time, but I just got a lot of experience and a lot of information that's going to help me one day when I go into the and try this again. So to me, we're always
Ah.
learning, growing, and building experiences. So maybe you're not ready to be that vice president or the CEO, but boy, it's great that you went and tried these different departments or these different roles in the
Mm-hmm.
business because
Mm-hmm.
now you have firsthand experience, firsthand knowledge of what happens in each one of those um, departments and each one of those
Mm-hmm.
situations. That when it is the right time for you to make a run at something, you've broadened your experience, you've broadened your knowledge. So no matter where we stop or start, the more experience you get is what you're going for. You're still better off. than where you were 6 months prior when you started out on this impossible goal. So the disappointment, sure, it might be disappointing because you got to like stop, right?
Yes.
But you can work through that uncomfortable feeling. You can work through that emotion and decide when you're ready, I just got a lot of experience and it's only going to better me in the future when I decide to try this again. And as far as people judging you, that's on you. Don't let them bother you.
It's on me.
I judge
I need
people
the top
too.
model.
I mean, we all judge, right? I judge people,
Yes.
but
Yes.
they do that. You know, you never know if you're being judged or not either. You put that in your
Yeah.
head that people are judging you.
Yes. Yes. And the conversation is happening in my head, really. So I'm
Totally.
not even 100% sure that it's accurate.
Right.
So good. So good. You've squared it out very nicely for me. It has been such a pleasure having this conversation. I think our listeners are going to enjoy it as much as I did, just hearing your ideas on this. And it makes so much sense that we use the impossible goal to grow, to build our mental resilience, and to get our brain actually thinking in a bigger way. It's perfect. Thank you so much for today, BJ.
Thank you, Janette.